Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up on the program. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will impose a 35% tariff on Canadian goods starting August. To help Ukraine in its war against Russia, President Donald Trump says he will send weapons, including Patriot air defense systems, for Ukraine via NATO. Plus, Nigeria says it cannot accept Venezuelan prisoners from the United States as America mounts pressure on African countries. You're already here. Let's begin The World Today. Welcome again to the program. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will impose a 35% tariff on Canadian goods starting August 1st, even though both countries are just days away from a self-imposed deadline to reach a new trade deal. The announcement comes in the form of a letter published on Trump's social media platform, Truth Social, along with additional threats of blanket tariffs of 15% or 20% on most trade partners. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says his government would continue to protect the country's workers and businesses as they head towards the new deadline. Trump has sent more than 20 such letters to other U.S. partners this week. He also says the U.S. will announce new tariffs on the European Union. A blanket 25% tariff has also been imposed on some Canadian goods, with the nation also hit hard by Trump's global steel, aluminum and auto tariffs, though there is a current exemption in place for goods that comply with a North American free trade agreement. Brazil has also been threatened with a crippling tariff of 50% starting August 1st, according to a letter by President Trump to President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The letter posted on Truth Social, President Trump says Lula is undertaking a witch hunt that would end immediately over charges against former President Jair Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro has bragged about his closeness with the U.S. president. He's facing trial for allegedly attempting to stage a coup against Lula. President Lula has vowed to reciprocate if Trump follows through with his threat. According to him, Brazil is a sovereign nation with independent institutions and will not accept any form of tutelage. In the meantime, hundreds of people have taken to the streets of Rio de Janeiro to protest against the country's economic situation as the U.S. government announces a 50% tariff on Brazilian goods. The demonstrations held where social movements initiated a popular plebiscite to discuss a 6-day work week with 1 day of rest, as well as the exemption of income tax for individuals earning up to $900 per month. The protesters seize a chance to voice their opposition to the recent announcement of the upcoming 50% tariffs on Brazilian goods from the U.S. According to the Trump administration, the implementation of the tariff is a response to the trade deficit with Brazil and the trial of former President Jair Bolsonaro. The president has stated that any recent increase in tariffs against Brazil would be met with reciprocity. He is cautioned against any interference in Brazil's judicial system.
A gente fazer laços e criar com os países que cooperam e pensam o mundo nessa visão de solidariedade e cooperação.
Para quem ganha até 5 mil, defender o fim da escala 6x1, defender a nossa água pura.
O impacto maior eu acho que é para os americanos, porque eles é que vão ser sobretaxados.
And here in Nigeria, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tugar, says the country will not cave in to pressure from the Trump administration to accept Venezuelan deportees from the United States. Mr. Tugar was guest on Channels Television's PoliticsToday on Thursday. He said Nigeria has enough challenges of its own and will not become a dumping ground for Venezuelan prisoners deported from the U.S. amid President Trump's crackdown on undocumented migrants. Ambassador Tugar also reacted to President Trump's threat to hit BRICS nations with an extra 10% trade tariff for their anti-American stance.
Do you have fears that we might suffer any kind of sanction from America because of this, our relation?
No, I don't. And if we do, it will be most unfortunate because we are looking to do deals with the US. President Trump has always emphasized the need to do deals and do deals with African countries, Asian countries, and Nigeria stands in a very good position to continue its symbiotic relationship with the US. We possess a lot of critical minerals, not just lithium, but we also possess rare earths. There's something called samarium that you get from monazite, for instance. Samarium is used to produce very powerful metals that are used in missiles and missile systems, for instance. And when we talk about BRICS, let's not forget that these BRICS members, the initial BRICS members, these are the same countries that are in the G20. Brazil is a member of the G20. Okay, Russia is a member of the G20. India is a member of the G20. China is a member of the G20.
But BRICS minister is supposed to be a competition to the
the US is equally. No, it's not. That's where people get it wrong.
It's supposed to be an economic competition to these organizations.
They participate in both because there are two different things. And it doesn't stop them from doing business with the US. It doesn't stop them from being partners with the US in G20. The issue of tariffs may not necessarily have to do with us participating in BRICS. You have to also bear in mind that the US is mounting considerable pressure on African countries to accept Venezuelans to be deported from the US, some straight out of prison. It will be difficult for a country like Nigeria to accept Venezuelan prisoners into Nigeria. We have, in the famous words of, I don't know if you know the US rap group called Public Enemy. If you do, then you'll remember a line from Flavor Flav, a member of the group, who said, Flavor Flav has problems of his own. I can't do nothing for you, men. We have enough problems of our own. We cannot accept Venezuelan deportees to Nigeria. For crying out loud. We already have 230 million people.
Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tuga. The world is a lot safer when nations do not develop nuclear weapons. This much was emphasized by the Executive Secretary of the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, Dr. Robert Floyd, during his public lecture on the Comprehensive Nuclear Ban Treaty as a model of multilateral success, what it means for Africa today and tomorrow. Dr. Floyd says the CTBT has been instrumental to curbing proliferation of countries' abilities to develop nuclear weapons.
The number of states that have signed the CTBT is 52 out of the 54. The number that are ratified. It is a great concern for any country to choose to develop nuclear weapons and therefore the spread of nuclear weapons to further countries. Because the risk is that while ever nuclear weapons exist, a possessor of those weapons may end up using them. The rationale is generally stated that it's about deterrence, that you hold a powerful weapon to push back adversaries. But we in recent times have heard threats of use. So it is not a more stable world with more countries having nuclear weapons. It is a less stable world. And I am glad that Africa stands as one when it stands against nuclear weapons in this continent and in this world. And I really want to keep hearing those voices from Africa amplified, that all countries...
In another development, the U.S. says it will send weapons, including Patriot air defense systems, for Ukraine via NATO. President Donald Trump was speaking to U.S. media. He told them the new deal includes sending Patriots to NATO and having NATO distribute them, adding that NATO would pay for the weapons. His announcement comes after Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke about having a positive dialogue with Mr. Trump on ensuring that arms arrived on time. He said he had asked for 10 Patriot systems after a surge in Russian drone and missile attacks on Ukrainian cities in the past week. The Patriot batteries detect and intercept oncoming missiles and are regarded as one of the world's best air defense systems. In the meantime, President Trump says he's disappointed in Russia and will make a major statement on the country in the coming week. In an interview, President Trump reiterated his criticism of President Vladimir Putin of Russia over the country's continued attacks on Ukraine, saying he expects the Senate to pass a tougher Russia sanctions bill sponsored by his close ally, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Malaysia for the ASEAN Post-Ministerial Conference in Kuala Lumpur. His address to the conference saw him praising the role of the Indo-Pacific region in the upcoming semi-centenary. On the sidelines, Mr. Rubio met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, a first meeting as part of the Russian-U.S. consultations in Riyadh on February 18. The diplomats also held several telephone conversations. Rubio's first visit to Asia comes amid U.S. President Donald Trump's plans to increase tariffs for 7 ASEAN member states from August 1st.
I echoed what the President has said, both disappointment and frustration at the lack of progress in peace talks or in a path forward. So we'll continue to engage. We shared some ideas and comments, which I'll take back to Washington as early as this evening in terms of calls and reflected, and perhaps there's something to build on there. So, but it was a frank conversation. It was an important one. We had it, and we talked about some other items as well and related to the war in Ukraine, but that was obviously the first and foremost topic that we discussed. And look, the President's been pretty clear. He's disappointed and frustrated that there's not been more flexibility on the Russian side to bring about an end to this conflict. We hope that can change. And we're going to continue to stay involved where we see opportunities to make a difference. Well, the President has said that that's an option that's available to him, both under existing authorities, but primarily if the Senate and the House can pass legislation that gives them the opportunity to do that. So we've been engaging with Congress on what that bill would look like. Well, I think that decision's been, that decision unfortunately was mischaracterized. It was a pause pending review on a handful of specific type munitions. That, frankly, is something that is logical that you would do, especially after an extended engagement that we saw both in defense of Israel and in defense of our own bases. And so it was a very limited review of certain types of munitions to ensure that we had sufficient stockpiles. And it's typical when you do these reviews that there's a short-term pause, because if, in fact, the review comes back that you have a shortage, you can't pull it back once it's been sent. But generally speaking, aid to Ukraine continues along the schedule that Congress appropriated.
Staying with the ASEAN conference, UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy encouraged British companies to boost their investments in the ASEAN region and affirmed the importance of the partnership between the UK and Southeast Asia. On the final day of the 58th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting in Kuala Lumpur, Lammy outlined the ASEAN-UK plan of action as other senior officials from both sides assessed the completion of over 80% of commitments. He also noted that on the progress made in the party's action plan, stressing nearly 95% of the program is on track for delivery.
As our recently published trade strategy set out, we believe that this region offers real potential for our businesses to expand, and we're working with you to unlock that. And that's why we backed CPTPP's decision in May to work towards a dialogue this year with ASEAN, and why we've been supporting development of the ASEAN power grid and why we're backing British firms to scale up their investments across the region. All told, we've done a lot to both grow and to ensure we have security this past year. Nearly 95% of our action plan is on track for delivery, and the commitments on connectivity we made last year in our first joint ministerial statement is well underway. Our job now is to go further as we prepare for the 5th anniversary of this partnership next year and the launch of a new action plan to guide our cooperation out to 2030. I'm looking forward to discussing how we do so.
We're on back to our lead story. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is saying that his government will continue to protect the country's workers and businesses as they head towards a new deadline of U.S. tariffs. After President Donald Trump announced a 35% tariff on Canadian goods starting August 1st, this comes as an already 25% tariff already exists between Canada and the United States on Canadian goods. The nation hit hard by Trump's global steel, aluminum, and auto tariffs. There's a current exemption in place for goods that comply with the North American Free Trade Agreement. While Trump said a 35% tariff begins August 1st, despite the fact that both of them, the two countries, Canada and the U.S., are just days away from the deadline to reach a new trade deal. This announcement was made by the U.S. president on his Truth social media platform, along with additional threats of blanket tariffs of 15% or 20% on most trade partners. Let's talk about this now. Joining me is international affairs analyst Dr. Charles Chukwunaru is in Alberta, Canada. Dr. Chukwunaru, thank you for joining us on the program. We appreciate your being here because we know that Canada is currently fighting those wildfires that are giving you sleepless nights in Canada.
Yes, Amarachi, thank you for having me. It's only you that can pull me away from the wildfire cases right now.
and just before we start the interview, how are what's the containment level now with those wildfires in Canada?
Well, I can't talk about it for professional reasons now.
Okay. Yeah. We understand. We understand. But for our viewers, Dr. Chukwunaru is also a humanitarian helping out with some of these cases locally in Canada. But to the purpose of the discussion now, those trade tariffs between the U.S. and Canada, a surprise to many this morning when Trump posted on Truth Social 35% tariffs on Canadian goods. The tariffs he imposed before were not enough, and the rift that it caused between the U.S. and Canada, not enough for both countries. Are we getting a sense now that President Trump is probably imposing these tariffs because he really wants Canada to become the 51st state of the U.S., or because he really is trying to close the trade deficit between the two countries?
You see, I don't even know where to start from, to be honest, because we've lost count of the tariff trajectory and what Donald Trump is doing. In fact, it's very puerile or infantile, so to speak. He is talking about closing trade deficits, and one will wonder countries. So one will wonder if he really understands the theory of balance of trade or balance of payment. Amarachi, you have a balance of payment deficit with your hairdresser or your tailor because money is flowing from you to him or her. Okay? And then Channel Television has a balance of payment deficit between you, Amarachi, and Channel Television because money is flowing from Channel Television to you. There's no way you can close trade deficit with every nation. I don't know if you understand the theory of comparative advantage. I don't know whether you understand the political economics of tariffs. We are living in an increasingly globalizing world. There will be trade trade deficit between countries. There will be trade deficit between partners in business. So it's a natural phenomenon. Anyway, so back to your question. I don't think it's about closing a trade deficit because he can't just do that. Okay, so some people still believe that he's still interested in making Canada the 25th state of America, which for me and other people, majority of reasonable people see it as a dream. And this is a dream that Donald Trump will not wake up from. He's going to keep trying. The last time he said, oh, the Golden Dome project, Canada will pay about 61 billion US dollars to be covered. But if they become part of the US, they don't need to pay. And one will wonder, what is this guy talking about? You cannot secure Alaska without securing Canada. You can't secure Northern South Dakota, Montana, which is just less than 3 hours drive from me here, without securing Canada. What is this guy talking about? And today he's talking about fentanyl. The reason he adduced for this latest onslaught is fentanyl. And the latest statistic shows that the recent fentanyl import into the US, it's about, 22,000 kilograms, and only 48 is coming from Canada. Nobody likes fentanyl. Canadians don't like it. But they like the devastating effect. But using a very serious matter as an excuse in his infantile, very puerile
so that's
policy. I mean, it's taking a joke too far.
Okay. So it's uncertain, what goods do come under the tariffs, but there are speculations that some of these goods may be part of the CUSMA, and that's the agreement between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada on movement of goods and the trade of goods and so on. If these tariffs if some of these goods that the tariffs do come on is part of this group, what sort of problems would that cause for Canada and for the U.S.?
Oh, it's causing problems already. Before I came on this program, I checked the U.S. stock exchange. It's in the red. This guy is a joker. You can't be toying with the U.S. economy. The U.S. is the leading economy in the world. He can't be toying with it. He doesn't understand what he's doing. The U.S. stock market is in the red right now as we speak. It happened the last time he did this kind of thing, and then caused problems everywhere. And of course, there is this very popular saying in Wall Street. It's called TACO. TACO means Trump's always chickens out. So the U.S. trade stock market will keep going down until it chickens out. Of course, it's going to affect, if all this is affecting, of course, businesses between Canada and U.S. It's affecting the U.S. consumer because the incident of taxation lies on the consumer, and the tariff is part of taxation. Sorry. So when you impose tariffs or tariff tax, or tax in the name of tariff to goods coming in from Canada to U.S., who is going to bear the brunt? The consumers in U.S. Like I said, the incidence of taxation lies with the consumers. And if the importers cannot import, the prices will go up. And if they don't import and the people cannot buy, there is a problem in the economy. So it's going to affect the U.S. economy more than it will affect Canada. It's affecting the U.S. economy more than it's affecting Canada. It's going to affect everybody. The only country I see that will gain from all this is China, because it is threatening China. China, all of a sudden, in spite of its human rights records, in spite of its democratic credentials, China is appearing to be the most stable player among the three superpowers in the world today. Everybody wants to do business with China, even EU. They don't even care about human rights and democracy anymore because of what the, anyway, I don't want to digress. So let's stay with your question.
The 50% tariffs already on steel and aluminum coming to the U.S. That also impacts on Canadian firms. Those manufacturers, how are they coping, with having to deal with the difference?
Well, they have to deal with it. They have to diversify. Canada has been dependent on the American economy for a very long time because they are so, you can't even draw the line. Like if I drive less than 3 hours from here, I'll be in Montana. So you see that Calgary or Alberta as a whole trades more with countries like United States, states in the United States like Montana, North and South Dakota, etc., more than it does with Ontario. Ontario trades more with the East Coast in the US more than it does with British Columbia or Saskatchewan. So that will even help, national trade, develop new national trade routes in Canada. It will help, win Canada. Anyway, coming to aluminum, one would even wonder what Trump is doing because this aluminum and steel product come from mines. And he's saying if you want to produce in US, you don't have to pay. Is he really talking about uprooting a steel mine to the US and you transfer a steel mine? Is he talking about uprooting or transferring aluminum mine? Can you just get up one day and say, okay, I'm closing this mine, I'm moving over? This is madness. So that's why some people think he's still in his dream, which he'll never wake up from. Even when he leaves government as president, he'll still be talking about Canada become the 25th state, even until he goes to his grave, because it will not happen. You're talking about, I'm going to imposing 50% tariff on mine products in Canada, unless it is being, and if you see the letter, the recent letter he circulated, and I find it very, I don't even understand, I find it very shocking that the president of the United States will be issuing letters to countries through his social media platform, the Truth social media platform. In the letter to Canada, he said that if you decide to manufacture, if your company decides to manufacture these products in the US, you don't have to pay the tariff. And when you talk about aluminum and steel, which is mine-based, is it indirectly, technically saying if you become the tariff 51st state of America, you don't have to pay tariff because you can't just move mines from country to country. It is on the ground.
Yeah, it is quite difficult to understand. I do agree with you on that. It is quite difficult to understand exactly where the mind of the U.S. president is on that. And do you think that all of this actually makes countries think of America as, having become greater on the road to greatness under President Trump?
In fact, it will be difficult to recognize the U.S. when Trump is through with the U.S. In my previous appearances here, I talked about how he's damaging Pax Americana and American exceptionalism in contemporary politics. But let me use the example of China. He's trying to do a reverse Kissinger in China. And you're doing it with people like Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio, you can't compare him to Henry Kissinger. Now, Marco Rubio is both Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. The last person that did that was Henry Kissinger, my late political intellectual friend, the great professor of international relations and strategy. He is trying to do the opposite of what Henry Kissinger did. You don't have a Henry Kissinger in the room. You don't even have any, I don't even see any adult in the room, in the cabinet, in White House right now. And you have one person who I don't even know how he's qualified to be both NSA and Secretary of State at the same time. So that's confusion everywhere. So it's kind of demystifying the US. But well, fortunately for the Americans, they have strong institutions of state that will check him. For instance, the tariff issue is still before the court. Donald Trump lost in the court of, in the lower court. He stayed the order. The matter is still on appeal. It go up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and if the court rules that it has no power to do what to use executive orders to levy tariffs here and there, of course, the whole thing will become a waste of everybody's time. It is a joke. Okay, look at the case of Brazil. He's threatening 50% tariff from Brazil for over their local political issues. The reason he's citing is how they treated the former Brazilian president. Because you don't like the way they treated him, you are it's an abuse. You don't even have the powers to do all that, because this power lies with the Congress. That is the position of the U.S. court, the Trade Industrial Court, as of now. And you're using it against a country over their own domestic problem. It's making a caricature of the U.S. He does not, I'm sure he has not even read anything about the U.S. grand strategy. He doesn't even understand. When you look at the policies of his government in terms of international relations, in foreign policy and trade, you can't make out any grand strategy. In fact, professors of U.S. grand strategy, like my late friend, Professor Peter Gowan in London, will be blushing in his grave. You can't make out any strategy. The U.S. is losing out as of now.
Dr. Chukwunaru, thank you so much. Mind-boggling ways of the U.S. President Donald Trump as he relates with other countries. You do make a fair point there. The U.S. President releasing these letters on social media does say a lot and gives us a lot to think about.
I don't understand it. This is a serious matter. He's making a caricature, he's making a joke out of it. And one wonders, and this is a matter that is still in court. Okay, he said he gave August 1st deadline. Wait for August 1st. He said this 90 days, the last time he gave a 90 days pause, he said deals will be signed every day. So 90 days, 90 days. No single deal has been signed. And
we'll have to revisit the issue, Doctor.
It's causing confusion. Hold on, America. I need to drive this point home. For a deal to become a deal, for a trade deal, a tariff deal to become a deal in the United States of America, it has to be signed, it has to be passed by Congress.
Right.
It doesn't become a deal by executive order because another government can come and throw it away.
Got it. Thank you.
The man is confused.
Thank
he
you
does
so
not understand
much.
Governance.
Your
doesn't
thoughts,
understand international relations.
Your thoughts and your analysis greatly appreciated on The World Today. Thank you so much, Dr. Chukwunaru, for joining us on the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
EU and U.S. talks are ongoing in a bid to secure a trade deal as the U.S. warns trading partners to negotiate new agreements or face higher import taxes by August 1st. It's the latest deadline in President Donald Trump's implementation of reciprocal tariffs. Let's join the DW's correspondent Thomas Sparrow in Berlin for more of this. Thomas, great to see you. What is the EU strategy to deal with Donald Trump's tariffs?
The EU's strategy to deal with Donald Trump's tariffs is based both on short-term measures and also on potential long-term measures as well. The short-term measures include possible retaliatory tariffs in case these tariffs do continue as they have been discussed, but at the same time keeping channels of communication open as possible in order to secure that detail. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, in fact, said this Wednesday at the German Parliament that he expects that trade agreement to be signed until the end of this month and that he's cautiously optimistic, and he's echoing with that cautious optimism what we also hear from other leaders in the European Union. For the European Union, any idea of high tariffs, any potential problem with high tariffs is extremely controversial. The European Union is to a large extent based on free trade, and especially any kind of problem with the United States, one of its closest trade partners, is very problematic indeed. The goal from the European Union's perspective would be to keep the tariffs as low as possible, while at the same time making sure that they can still work with the United States in very important issues around the world, not only trade, but basically keeping those channels of communication open so that the relationship can be as good as possible.
Understood. But how concerned are those European leaders about the potential economic impact of these trade disputes?
European leaders are indeed concerned about the potential impact that has to do again with the fact that the European Union places great value on free trade, but also it's based on the fact that European economies are having a very difficult time. The German economy also in particular is having a very difficult time in recent years. So there is essentially concern. There is also hope that that deal can be achieved soon. But at the same time, we're hearing from different European leaders the call that Europe, and in particular European Union countries, should reduce the dependency towards the United States. And that essentially means the EU is looking for other trade partnerships around the world with Asia-Pacific countries, with South America, also with African countries. So this is part of the strategy as well. The European public is also concerned, especially about the concrete impact of potential tariffs, for example, on economic growth, on higher prices, on lower wages, on job losses. Those are all issues that are certainly a matter of concern for European citizens.
So, Thomas, the EU and Germany have proposed a new World Trade body aimed at bypassing the long-standing paralysis of the World Trade Organization. How viable is this project?
You mentioned that long-standing paralysis at the WTO, and that is indeed a matter of concern for European leaders, and that's why German leader Friedrich Merz, but also the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, actually floated that idea of another global institution. Now, those who favor that say that it could help deal with this paralysis that you mentioned, but at the same time there are criticisms from those who believe that it would create fragmentation, that it would not necessarily be efficient, especially if big countries like China, the United States, India do not sign up for that, and it could actually create more problems than solutions. So far, experts are stressing that this is only an idea that is being floated, that is not something that will necessarily be implemented immediately, but that could actually create a wider debate on a very important topic, and that topic is obviously global trade and how to deal with potential disputes.
Well, a lot to unpack here, Thomas. Thanks again for joining us on the program. We're off to the UK now, where the British Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is defending the country's latest migration deal with France. She says the new migrants returns scheme agreed with France on Thursday is robust enough to withstand potential legal challenges. According to her, she had not been in close contact with European governments that have expressed concerns about the one-in, one-out deal, saying the European Union had been very supportive and helpful. She says the government had done a lot of work to make sure that the system is robust to legal challenges, which hampered the previous Conservative government's efforts to deport some illegal migrants to Rwanda. The deal was signed and announced by Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron on Thursday at the end of his three-day state visit to the UK. The scheme, which will initially run as a pilot, proposes that for each migrant that the UK returns, Britain will accept another who has made a legal claim in France. Let's hear more now on the French President Emmanuel Macron and the UK Prime Minister's thoughts and announcement of the deal.
Starting first with tackling illegal migration. Now, this is a global crisis, and it's a European crisis, but it is also very acutely a crisis for our two nations, a crisis of law, security, humanity and fairness. We face a sprawling, multi-billion-pound enterprise run by organised criminal gangs, leading hundreds of people to their death in the Channel. So we're determined, together, to end this vile trade. There is no silver bullet here, but with a united effort, new tactics, and a new level of intent, we can finally turn the tables. So I'm pleased to announce our agreement today on a groundbreaking returns pilot. For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks, and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally. This will show others trying to make the same journey that it will be in vain, and the jobs they've been promised in the UK will no longer exist because of the nationwide crackdown we're delivering on illegal working, which is on a completely unprecedented scale. The President and I have agreed that this pilot will be implemented in coming weeks.
UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. To weather events now in Pakistan. Flash floods have hit the city of Lahore, the capital of Punjab province, following heavy rainfall. Main streets are flooded and daily life has been disrupted. People have been seen making their way through the water, children having a holiday playing and swimming in the floods. Authorities say 11 people have died, several others injured over the past 24 hours. The Pakistan Disaster Management Authority suggests that 87 people have died, 149 of them injured, in rain-related incidents in the country since June 26. The Meteorological Department has issued a high-level warning for several areas, including Islamabad, Rawalpindi, Lahore, Sialkot, Gujranwala, and parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. It's not any better in Bangladesh, where heavy monsoon rainfall in Feni has caused several rivers to swell and breach embankments, submerging more than 100 villages, leaving up to 100,000 people stranded. Pictures posted online show vast areas of main roads submerged in waist-deep muddy water, with locals wading through it in an attempt to carry on with their daily activities. The relentless downpour, combined with upstream water flow from India's Tripura state, caused the Mahuri, Kuhua, Silonua rivers to rise, breaching embankments at 21 points. The flooding inundated villages across multiple sub-districts, including Fulgazi, Pashuram, Chagalangne, and Sedar. Personnel from the army, police, and fire services have helped people trapped in flood-hit areas, transporting them to shelters via speedboats, and food being distributed. The government has opened more than 160 centers to house over 8,000 displaced residents. And as floodwaters engulf homes, residents have also brought their livestock to shelters for protection. With coastal flooding and riverbank breaches a constant burden, concerns are mounting over the risk of landslides across Bangladesh. Feni has also suffered widespread power outages and contamination of water supplies. Shock has turned to grief across Texas, where at least 120 people died from flash floods. More were missing as the search for victims moved methodically along endless miles of rivers and rubble on Thursday. Photos of those who've died, along with a colorful array of flowers and candles, are decorating a fence in the hill country, growing tributes that reflects the enormity of the disaster in the region. The victims include 3 friends who had gathered for the July 4 weekend, 8-year-old sisters who were at summer camp, and a 91-year-old grandmother known for her sharp wit. More than 170 people have been reported missing, most of them in Kerr County, where nearly 100 victims have been recovered. The death toll remains at 120. This is as of Thursday, nearly a week since the floods first hit. Authorities say they have carefully gone over the list of those unaccounted for, but those numbers are often tough to pin down in the immediate aftermath of a disaster. The unrelenting power of floods forced families to make unnerving escapes with little time to spare. In the middle of the night, one woman recounted how she and others, including a toddler, first climbed into an attic and then onto a roof, where they heard screams and watched vehicles float past. At least 25 people have been taken to hospital in west Baltimore following suspected drug overdoses. Citing officials from the region's fire department, the BBC's U.S. partner CBS said 5 people were admitted in a critical condition, with others in serious condition. The incident, which took place near a road intersection in the Penn North area of the city on Thursday, led to the Maryland Department of Transportation closing a nearby subway station, while roads were also blocked. Fire Chief James Wallace told reporters emergency services are on the scene. On the scene were directed to multiple people suspected of overdosing by members of the public. He said people were found along 2 intersecting avenues as well as on the subway platforms and along alleyways following the initial response at around 9:20 local time. Officials have not named any substance that they believe have been involved. Fighters from the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, in Turkey have surrendered their weapons in a ceremony in Suleymaniye. The fighters marched in formation, carrying their weapons and placing them in a metal container before setting them on fire. This event comes 2 months after the group announced an end to its armed struggle against the Turkish state. The PKK, founded by Abdullah Öcalan in the late 1970s and engaged in a bloody conflict with the Turkish state since 1984, announced in May it would dissolve itself and abandon armed struggle. The decision followed a call made by Öcalan from his prison in İmralı Island near Istanbul back in February. Welcome back. The UN's flagship platform on artificial intelligence in Geneva is ending today after 4 days of high-level dialogue, cutting-edge demonstrations and urgent calls for inclusive AI governance. The event comes as autonomous and generative systems evolve faster than regulatory frameworks can keep pace. The AI for Good Global Summit 2025 brings together governments, tech leaders, academics, civil society, and young people to explore how artificial intelligence can be directed towards sustainable development goals and away from growing risks of inequality, disinformation, and environmental strain.
This transformative AI moment demands more than admiration or alarm. It demands dialogue and concerted action on inclusive, forward-looking governance that drives innovation and builds public trust. Governance that minimizes the risks and leaves no one behind.
Tourists from Pyongyang have rolled into Moscow's Yaroslavsky railway station for the first time in 5 years today, after the resumption of train services suspended due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We're looking at the train approaching the platform before passengers and employees leave the carriages and make their way through the station. On June 9, Russian Railways officially announced the resumption of the Pyongyang-Moscow and Pyongyang-Khabarovsk routes. The press service stressed that the journey to the Russian capital was the longest uninterrupted railway service in the world, covering over 10,000 kilometers in 8 days. The train, which departed on June 17, traveled through Kazan, Usurisk, Khabarovsk, Chita, and other Russian cities. And yes, you are seeing double twins, that is. Hundreds of fraternal and triplets all gathered at the Familia historical theme park in Tucumán, Argentina, to celebrate the 17th edition of the National Twins Festival, an event that pays tribute to this unique generic trait. The event featured contests including awards for the most identical pair and the best artistic talent. There were also musical performances, and cultural activities, artisan stands, and the day included with a group photo of the attendees, all 350 of them. The festival has gained notoriety as twins now attend to share their stories. Expectant mothers bring ultrasound images showing that they're pregnant with twins, and many return year after year, like some of them, Juan Jose and Miguel Angel Aguila, who are nearly 80 years old and can be seen at every edition dressed as Charlie Chaplin. Oh dear. According to local media, the festival began almost spontaneously when Enrique, the current mayor of the city of Famea, and a twin himself, noticed with his brother how many twins there were in the area. They decided to invite others to gather, and over time the initiative grew into a successful event. Today, the city is nationally and internationally recognized for this one-of-a-kind celebration. The event also aims to promote local tourism, as local authorities point out that the festival boosts Familia's economy through the influx of visitors from across the country who come to participate in the contest. That was a mouthful. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Obani.